you know, we all need to be doing better when it comes to sharing the road, and that's another key component of why bike lanes and bike infrastructure is so important, is that it gives everyone their space. So you've got the, you know, the infrastructure itself, that goes down great, but then what are we doing to teach people how to use it? We don't do any public education when it comes, you know, public service announcements, marketing campaigns about how to share the road, what your responsibilities are depending on your mode. We don't do that. I've been harping on that for years.
So what, people should take a course in how to ride a bike? Or?
Well, I mean, hey, I wrote a book. This is a useful tool, and I wrote this because there's so many new people riding, but we didn't teach kids how to ride in traffic as part of their school curriculum like they do in places like Copenhagen. So I wanted to give people a starting point for those that have thought, you know, I want to get back on my bike. That actually looks like something I can do, but where do I start? What kind of bike do I need? What am I supposed to do to turn left? What, you know, what are the expectations? What are my rights, responsibilities? I tried to put everything you need in this book. But that said, what I mean by public education is public service announcements. And when I did my license, there was nothing in there about sharing the road with bicycles. So we are not educating people for this new way of road sharing and the new realities of an urban center and how people are using the roadways. So it's fairly easy to put together a great commercial that explains, hey, that's, you know, that person over there, that person took their bike today instead of their car. And here's what you're supposed to do when you both get to the intersection at the same time. Or even, you know, language barrier free visual signage in bus shelters, for example, about using your right hand to open your door when you get out of the driver's side. That forces you to shoulder check, and you're going to look to see if there's a bike coming. So we can do simple stuff like that, but I think some of the funds that we put towards infrastructure and on-street stuff, we've got to almost match those funds when it comes to teaching people how to use it.
How much does it cost to put in bike parking like we see across the road here, or paint some lines on the road?
It depends on the type of infrastructure, for sure. I'm not sure what the cost of these racks was for the city. You'd have to double check with transportation about the cost of per kilometer of the different like bike, like what we've got on Richmond. So the cycle track versus the painted line. Either way, pennies compared to the 1-point-something billion we're talking about for moving a slice of the Gardner over, well, yeah. Right? Priorities.
The fact that we can spend $1 billion and reconstruct the Gardner Expressway East in light of climate change, in light of so many things. The fact that we're going to be doubling the population in the downtown core. Why in the world would we create a chunk of expressway to service a fraction of vehicles that are coming from outside of the downtown core, when we really need to be creating more places for the downtown core for people to live and work sustainably? It also, you know, completely flies in the face of what other cities are doing around the world. They're taking down their expressways. It's unbelievable that we're thinking about, you know, committing ourselves to last century's technology and last century's mobility.
Look at what we could do with the money that's now, well, maybe is to be earmarked for the Gardner. Think of what we could do across our city. I mean, we could have a connected network of bike lanes in the inner and outer suburbs as well as the core for even a fraction of the money that's proposed for the Gardner.
Maybe this is what they had in mind up in Markham, and it's not hard to see why. I'm at Toronto's new waterfront downtown, standing in front of Queen's Quay, which until fairly recently was a 4-lane unofficial highway that ran along the bottom end of the city. Now, under the direction of Waterfront Toronto, it has become one of the city's first complete streets. What do I mean by that? Well, take a look. You still got the lanes for cars, but you also have streetcars. You have bicycle lanes, serious bicycle lanes, and you have these enormous wide sidewalks. And as you can see from all the activity going on around me, people love it. This is what happens when you build a street where everyone is welcome. Everyone wants to be here. It seems everyone is here.
more and more where people want to work, where people want to play, is in vibrant municipal spaces, are in good global cities. And those cities have something else to offer just in roads and buildings. They've got a life, they've got a pulse. And a lot of that has to do with what is activated on the roads and on the sidewalks beside them.
It's a complicated problem, and it can't be something that is just limited to, redesigning roadways, though that's a really important part.
We have an example of transit which is overused on King Street, and you don't solve that congestion by just making bigger vehicles.
It's not about hating cars. It's about rethinking how we use our city space. This is public transportation space, and we have to consider how people are moving, how they want to move, how they could
Being
move.
more equal in how we share the spaces.
It's a redistribution, and it's tough.
So, we've talked to a lot of people, and even though they don't agree on everything, certain points do seem to emerge. For example, congestion. Congestion has reached the point where it can no longer be ignored, either on the streets of Toronto or the province. Then there's the question of safety. People are being killed in record numbers on the roads and highways of Ontario. This has to be dealt with. There is an urban revolution unfolding now, and people want access to the streets of the cities in this province. That doesn't mean suburbia is dying or that it's dead, far from it. But even out there, there's a hunger now for walkable spaces and dense communities where people can get where they want to get without having to drive for half an hour. We saw that in Markham, and it's going to happen in other suburban communities as well. The people who live in the condos that you see behind me don't want to own cars. We talked to Diana Lee. She arrived in Toronto a couple of years ago, discovered pretty quickly that she didn't need a car and doesn't even want a car. She can get where she wants to get by bike. These changes are not going to happen easily. They're not going to come quickly. There's enormous opposition. The idea that the streets belong to cars and trucks is ingrained and has been for 60, 70, 80 years. The very mayor of this city, John Tory, has done everything he can to slow down this change, this opening up of the streets. But the urban revolution has started, and although it's not finished yet, it's well along the way. For thestar.com, I'm Christopher Hume. What do you think?